This video is sponsored by adamandeve.com. Ooh. Use the code NANDO, N-A-N-D-O, for 50% off one item, plus free shipping in the US and Canada. Some exclusions apply. Okay. I enjoy a good horror movie from time to time, but there's some people who love the genre, like have seen all of the Conjuring movies and their spin-offs, and for whom the Friday the 13th and Halloween movies don't just sort of blend together in their memories like they do in mine. But damn, do I love Halloween. So, to get in the spirit, I went looking for some Halloween programming, ended up over at the home box office, and I found something truly special. One of the best new comedies of the last few years, and it just happens to be a spooky comedy. Los Espookys is a Spanish-language horror comedy series written by and starring Julio Torres as Andres and Ana Fabrega as Tati. The cast also includes Bernardo Velasco as Ronaldo, Cassandra Changarotti as Ursula, and Fred Armisen as Uncle Tico. It's basically a show about four friends who have a small business where they create spooks for people. I cannot implore you enough to watch this show. I think it is hysterical, and without spoiling it, I want to boil what I love about Los Espookys down to three things, and hopefully at the end of this video, you will be inspired to watch the show yourself. First off, the most interesting part of Los Espookys has to be the premise, which is basically the best new take on Scooby-Doo I've seen since, I don't know, that 5 minutes of the second Scooby-Doo movie in the beginning that's actually pretty good. The title of the show, Los Espookys, refers to the name of the business itself, run by the four friends. And they function as a sort of bizarro mystery Inc. Ronaldo is the group's leader, the Fred. He's able to inspire his team members like Fred is, but Ronaldo lacks the confidence that makes Fred who he is. Andres is the team's Daphne. He is vain, fashion-obsessed, rich. Much like Daphne, always wanted to be a supermodel and detective in some versions of the show. Andreas is torn between his family's chocolate empire and his love of horror and spooky things. Then you've got Ursula, the group's Velma. She's the technician, ends up actually bringing the spooks to life. However, where Velma can sometimes be timid, Ursula is the most assertive member of the group. And then you've got Shaggy and Scooby, who are kind of both rolled into the character of Tati. She is well-meaning, but kind of out there. However, where Shaggy and Scooby are scaredy cats who just sort of usually end up solving the mystery by dumb luck, Tati has no fear and is invulnerable. It can pretty much do anything for some reason. And instead of going into the haunted mansion and solving some sort of paranormal mystery, Los Espookys are the ones who create the mystery. They set up spooks and costumes with special effects and levers and wires. We're taking a look behind the scenes at what must happen in a Scooby-Doo environment. And because of that, we get a lot of interactions with the people behind the spooks themselves, because people hire Los Espookys usually with the intention of getting one over on the public, creating some sort of publicity stunt, tricking someone. Rich and selfish people using horror to take advantage of nice regular people. So Los Espookys explores how these people exploit horror and superstition to get what they want. It is a deconstruction of the Scooby-Doo Mystery Inc. gang from the other side, because Los Espookys aren't the bad guys. They are just horror enthusiasts who enjoy setting up spooky situations and have somehow managed to parlay that into a career. But the people they're working for are jealous and petty. So you have a situation where this team is working for a corrupt politician trying to stir up some sort of publicity. But our heroes only see this as an opportunity to use their very unique set of skills and have fun. Which is why watching a show about characters who are essentially henchmen to Scooby-Doo villains isn't tiresome. Los Espookys are able to live their best life by creating these horror spooks. The second thing about Los Espookys that is so interesting is how it built on the Mexican horror genre. So I didn't know much about this before I watched Los Espookys, but horror is a huge part of Mexican cinema. In the 30s and 40s, Mexican cinema was dominated by westerns and dramas. And even though there were plenty of Mexican filmmakers who were interested in horror, it wasn't popular with the public. And in kind of the same way that Abbott and Costello made movies where they met up with Frankenstein and the werewolf and the mummy, Mexican horror really flourished after its crossover moment, except in the case of Mexican horror, they weren't working with comedians, they were working with professional wrestlers. Lucha Libre movies were all the rage, and it just sort of made sense to have the popular Lucha Libre characters like Santo fight a werewolf or Dracula, since those movies were essentially superhero movies anyway. And that isn't even unlike how in superhero movies and television and cartoons, Batman will fight Dracula every so often, or Spider-Man will fight a werewolf, or Captain America will turn into a werewolf. There's a lot of space in the horror genre for crossing over with other genres. So once the Lucha Libre horror movies became successful, horror started dominating Mexican cinema. Filmmakers were recreating the Frankenstein myth, and eventually Fernando Mendez made a movie about a vampire named El Vampiro, which starred Abel Salazar, who would go on to not only act in and produce more movies, but also started a studio of his own. A lot of Mexican horror also dealt with themes of spirituality and superstition based on legends that already existed, especially a lot that derived from Catholicism. So I don't think it's any coincidence that the first episode of Los Espookys deals with an exorcism in a Catholic church. Mexican horror also draws on local legends, most notably The Curse of the Crying Woman, aka La Llorona. But Mexican horror movies were known for being over the top, in a way that wasn't typical of the genre otherwise. There's a film called The Brainiac, also known as El Barón de Terror. It was directed by Chano Urueta and produced by and starred Abel Salazar. While not necessarily typical, The Brainiac is absurd. It is incredibly over the top. A lot of the Mexican horror movies felt very low budget, but that was on purpose as part of the fun. The movie itself is about a man who turns into kind of a werewolf monster and sucks people's brains out with his tongue. It kind of feels like they threw everything at the wall with this one, and then feels similar in tone to Los Espookys. There is a lot going on in the show. It's very surreal. Not only is the idea of creating a small business where you stage horror scenarios pretty absurd, but so much else that goes on in Los Espookys is equally strange and surreal. Some characters seem to be magic. The rules of the universe are incredibly vague. Pretty much everything is done by pulling levers, regardless of whether the task being accomplished by pulling the lever has any basis in reality, or even if it did, would be the kind of thing you would pull a lever for. There's magic amulets, sea monsters, hypnotized newswomen. One character is just named and referred to for almost the entire show as Mysterious Woman, and nobody thinks that's weird. And as you get more comfortable in the world of Los Espookys, the world becomes more and more out there. But you figure by the second of 6 episodes, the audience is bought in enough that if they're still there, they're willing to go with you anywhere. So like Mexican horror, Los Espookys is both high, clearly, but also low budget. Most of the things they're doing aren't very convincing, even if they're not really that plausible either. And the more surreal the show gets, the less characters on the show acknowledge it. So it feels incredibly natural. I can't imagine a show about superheroes or any general science fiction show being quite as out there as Los Espookys. And I believe we are able to accept that as an audience whether we know it or not because of the bizarre reality present in Mexican horror movies. And last reason I love Los Espookys is because Los Espookys does a really good job of demonstrating what's great about horror when you take away the scares. Because it's not a scary show, there aren't jump scares or anything like that. There's bits that feel a little bit more eerie, I guess, than others. But Los Espookys without being a straight take on the horror genre, does manage to highlight what makes the horror genre special. Our 4 main characters are incredibly passionate. Well, okay, 3 of them, but Tati has her moments. They are ostensibly misfits, even though they're really not. Once we get into their actual backstories, most of the characters have some sort of moment that makes them feel like a monster that drove them to horror because horror was the only way they could own the thing that was strange about them. Even though when you really get down to it, the thing that's strange about them isn't that strange. In fact, the only character that does have a legitimately strange and horrifying backstory talks about it so much and is so dramatic that no one really wants to hear about it. And this is a show about what are essentially Scooby-Doo villains, but they're all very happy, especially Ronaldo, the group's leader. In an interview, Bernardo Velasco said that part of why he was able to play Ronaldo as such a positive figure is because in the Mexican culture, death is so frequently tied to joy. It's something that's celebrated with things like Dia de los Muertos, and Los Espookys uses that to juxtapose the serious and somber and dour parts of horror with this joyful, kind, friendly group that doesn't really see it like that. That sees horror as a celebration of life and everything that's weird. And honestly, if you lived in this world that is as weird as the one they live in, it would be weird if you didn't embrace horror, I guess. One of the things that really stands out after a second watch is how strange it is that some characters don't react to this world, that try to live a normal life, even though everything that's going on around them is bizarre. Los Espookys has created a world where horror is both mundane and fantastic. And it's an incredibly engaging world that you just want to be a part of. You want to learn more about it. Not in like a Lost, you want to figure out all of the conspiracies that are going on, but you just want to spend more time with these characters in their day-to-day life, navigating pyramid schemes and relationships and things like that. Los Espookys is a world where anything can be as interesting as a horror movie, and a horror movie can be as boring as everything else. And that, along with those 2 other things, is why I cannot recommend this show enough. It's on HBO now. Go watch it. If you don't like subtitles, too bad. It is worth the effort because Los Espookys is 100% the next great horror comedy. As always, I have to give a humongous thank you to everyone who continues to support the channel on Patreon, because you guys are the best. If you want to see your name up here, get access to videos early, other cool stuff, throw in literally any amount of money at patreon.com/NandoVMovies. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. Listen to my podcast, Mostly Nitpicking. Every week, me and my friends DJ and Diggins pick apart a piece of pop culture by looking exclusively at the details. We're going to be doing New Mutants. We're going to be doing Tenet soon, because those movies are coming to home release, which is going to be so cool, and all kinds of other movies. Soul movies are starting to show up, so we're going to do those. So you can listen to us wherever you listen to your podcasts. We are at NitPickingPod on Twitter. Follow me on Twitch, subscribe to me on Twitch, twitch.tv/NandoVMovies. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I am NandoVMovies on all of those platforms. Oh wait, look at this. Look at this cool look at this handsome enamel pin. Wow, isn't that something? You can't buy it yet, but it will be available soon, and isn't it nice? So that's a little tease of that. That's all I got. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Stay safe, vote, all that stuff. Bye.